Does God sleep? She asked, sat on the edge of a single bed. No, he never rests, he answered, laid next to her. I was there, birthed a day before, looked after by the 5-year-old girl Josie, gravely staring at the steel casement window, overlooking a farm as big as Texas outside of it. On the inside, however, things were rather small. Rooms, heads, hearts. There was not much space to reason, nor on the inside, neither out on the vast, sunlit farm. Here, in this place, nobody asked why. Things were the way they were, unruffled and never questioned. The way of life had no waves. What it consisted of was still water without a single crease. Not that either of us objected, because the most it would do was drown us, and we'd be happy to. Unlike waves, they'd take us away, away from each other, towards the faithless oblivion. We were all too weak and timid to let such occur. Therefore, they never let anything slip out of place, not even the slightest bit. They are my people that occupy this land. She is my caretaker. I am as much her as I am everybody she loves. The hut sat on grass that grew long and thick all year long, peeked in through gaps in the flooring, shed its cutworms to feast on crumbs underneath beds where the broom couldn't reach. They were opposed to insecticides. It was their way of preserving everything the land had to offer. As said before, we did not disturb anything here. An oil lamp was supposed to be fetched only for cooking, bathing, and feeding. There were two hung on separate hooks, one for the activities mentioned, the other to spare for emergencies to tend to during the night. The rest of the chores were kept for the days when the house was in the grip of scorching heat and abundant lighting bestowed by the sun above. Reading was reserved for the daytime too. She read to me, for the one day I had seen so far. The nights got dark. The one I beheld right after emerging was rather cold and moonless. The darkness never subsided in the ones that followed. Days were long. Time stretched out to birth budding thoughts that never became what they set out to become. She started community school that summer, by the end of which began helping out at her uncle's dairy each day, making a stop by on the way back from school. She'd return shortly after daylight liquefied into a choral undertone, still lingering near the outskirts of the hut, to be able to read to me before nightfall tucked us all in. I was looked after by either of the family members while she was away, mostly by her father, would check on me perpetually during his breaks from chopping wood, to transport to a city none of us were to ever wander. There were no tall tree trunks on the farm to cut down, so he'd head every morning to the only forest in the area. At the dinner table, he'd boast about digging all but finding none. None of us believed him except for his wife, his dearest, beloved enough to only verbally abuse. Her mother was a fragile woman. I'd hear her cry whilst carrying her restless toddler thumping the wooden floor with anxious steps as she waddled around the house, looking for a sense of belonging she wasn't destined to find in this lifetime. She'd talk to me although she knew she wasn't going to be answered. She'd sit in my vision posing numerous questions. As time went by, I realized she asked not one question expecting an answer. Her brother was as naive as he was young. He'd chase me out of corners his father asked him to watch, an activity he'd partake frequently but succeed in sometimes. Every so often, I'd abruptly stop midway to start running after him instead. He added a spoonful of sugar to an otherwise sugarless continuation. I spent my hours walking, grazing every digestible I laid eyes on, dragging my tongue across the surface of anything that could have a taste. Before long, I became a product of their nurture, a creature of mundane routine. I laid down my nucleus. I let them give it shape. I let them love me and reciprocated every ounce of it. But of all, I loved her the most. In this part of the world where we live, there exists a peculiar rumor. The Almighty resides in goats of all kinds, castrated, non castrated, adult, kid, male, female, any of